The war in Afghanistan may be over, but the impact on many goes on, and none more than the gentleman we're about to talk to. His name is Scott DeLuzio. He is an Army veteran. He is an author as well, and he joins us now via satellite. Mr. DeLuzio, first of all, thank you so much for your service, and welcome to Louisville, Kentucky via satellite.
Thank you, John, and hello to Louisville.
Your book is heart-wrenching. Let's talk a little bit about the hole that has been left by the war in Afghanistan and the hole in your heart, Mr. DeLuzio. Tell us a little bit about your story.
Yeah, so my brother and I were both raised in a very patriotic family, and we both joined after 9/11, answering the call to service that our country had. We saw the need for soldiers, and so we both decided to join the Army after 9/11. Both of us were deployed in 2010 to Afghanistan. We were in two separate units, but we were part of the same deployment. And my brother, Stephen, he was tragically killed on that deployment. But I used that as fuel to push me to go out and help other veterans. It led me to writing my books, Surviving Son, and my podcast, the Drive On podcast. And really the goal of both of those is really to help out other veterans who might be struggling in one way or another.
You know, the writing of this book, Scott, Mr. DeLuzio, the writing of this book, I would think, would be therapeutic for you. What is being done for other veterans who may suffer from, PTSD or other mental issues due to the war in Afghanistan?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, writing the book was definitely a therapeutic process, and sometimes it was a difficult process to do, going back and reliving some of those tough days and those tough things that I had to deal with. But I started my podcast, the Drive On podcast, because personally I knew several veterans who took their lives due to PTSD and the stresses of combat that they had to deal with and other things that are associated with that. And the numbers of people, the veterans who are struggling with mental health issues are absolutely staggering. So I talked to service providers who are out there trying to help out veterans, people who are parts of nonprofits and other organizations out there who are trying to fill the gap and fill the need of our veteran community.
Your book, Surviving Son, it deals with a lot of raw emotions, and I certainly can understand that. Losing a brother, I cannot imagine the emotional toll it took on you. With that being said, what kind of takeaway would you like people who read this book, what takeaway do you expect them to experience?
Yeah, so I hope that the veterans and the service members who read the book, I really do encourage them to pick up a copy of the book, Surviving Son. I hope that they learn from my mistakes and find that there are healthy ways to deal with the stresses of combat and PTSD and the other things that they might be dealing with. But I also hope that the civilians, the people maybe who've never served, I hope that they learn about the sacrifices that we make as a military community, the veterans and the service members, and how it affects our families and the communities that we live in.
Mr. DeLuzio, when you see what is happening now in Afghanistan, the turmoil, what is going on and with families and especially women, what are your thoughts?
You know, I first hear a lot of people who say that the lives over there in Afghanistan, they're all lost for nothing, that the last 20 years was a big wasted effort. And I want to say that we want to look at the positives of the things that we did over there. The lives, I don't feel like were lost for nothing, including my brother's. I think there was a purpose and a meaning behind that. And there was a lot of good that was done by taking the fight over to Afghanistan and taking it in their own backyard by preventing another 9/11 style attack here at home. And by doing that, we saved countless American lives by preventing another 9/11 style attack here. But we also saved Afghan lives over in Afghanistan as well, because those Afghans didn't have to live under that oppressive Taliban rule for the last 20 years. We provided great things like schools and infrastructure, bridges, roads, electricity and water, that type of thing to villages. So not only did they get to live in relative peace without having to worry about the Taliban, but they also got a little taste of freedom as well. And I hope that freedom tasted good to them and that they will continue to fight for their own freedoms.
I'm glad you're focusing, Mr. DeLuzio, on the positives, because there certainly are positives as far as the water, the schools, the safety that they were surrounded with. Do you encourage other veterans who maybe went through a war in Afghanistan to do the same, to focus on the positive, that there were some positive things that were done by the American troops?
Yeah, for sure, absolutely. I think when you focus on the negatives, you end up dwelling on those things, and that gets you into a real dark place. And so by focusing on the positives and thinking of all the good that we did and the things that we accomplished over there, I think it's just an incredible way, and it changes your mindset and it helps you come out with a better outlook on life and kind of help you through some of the things that you might be struggling with.
You mentioned those of us who are not veterans. If you had any recommendations about what we can do to help civilians who want to help our veterans and people who are suffering through some challenges as they return back from Afghanistan, what would you say, Mr. DeLuzio?
Yeah, I would definitely encourage everybody out there to learn about what the veterans are dealing with. There's a big disconnect between the military community, the veterans, the service members, and the civilians, the people who've never served. And there's a big disconnect between the two, and there's just a lack of understanding. And my book, Surviving Son, is a great way to learn about some of the issues that one family, my family, dealt with by the sacrifice that we made by losing my brother overseas. And my podcast, the Drive On podcast, we talk to so many different veterans who have their own issues, but also how they came out of those dark places that they found themselves in. And it's just a great way to learn and understand and have a little more compassion for the types of people who you might just think are invincible. And we're not. We're people just like everybody else.
Mr. DeLuzio, you're making a lot of sense about something that is very complex. So for folks who would like to read your book, Surviving Son, maybe they'd like to listen to your podcast, tell them how they can have access.
Great, yeah, so the book is available. Surviving Son is available on Amazon in paperback and Kindle format, or survivingsonbook.com, or you can listen to the podcast anywhere that you subscribe to podcasts, or driveonpodcast.com.
Scott DeLuzio, I wish your family peace. I know this has been tough for you. I appreciate you helping out others through your own experience. So again, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, John.
All right, Scott DeLuzio, once again, author and Army veteran.